Are you fascinated yet skeptical about the metaphysical, the mystical, and everything in between? Do you struggle to understand how to stay spiritual in a physical world that's constantly challenging you? What about the thought that you chose to experience this life and the lessons you go through? Well, this just might be the podcast you're looking for. Thank you for tuning in to Intuitive WTF Podcast. I'm Aaron Hart, intuitive reader, energy healer, and past life enthusiast, providing you a place to challenge, question, and maybe even laugh at my perspective and your own about the connection between the human, spiritual, and metaphysical journeys. So let's tune in. Thanks for joining me today. Aaron Hart here. We are here to discuss one of the experience workshops that we are going to have this Sunday at Heather Farms in Walnut Creek for one of our experiences. And the experience will actually be about manifestation. And today we have, excuse me if I don't say the last name correctly, Sheera Duerigen. Is
Pretty
that correct?
close.
Okay. A divine channel, energy healer, and spiritual counselor from Dawn Light Blossoming. And so we're actually going to be talking about the experience workshop called, oh, wow, what did I do? I did not have the specific title right there in my script, but How to Manifest When Hope Feels Scary, right? So that I thought was a great topic, as I love manifestation conversations and everything related to that. So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited.
So I'm going to ask you my first question that I ask everybody. What was your, WTF, what the fuck moment that kind of got you into, I guess, one, spiritual world, as well as two, wanting to kind of dive into manifestation and helping people kind of, obtain their dreams, I guess you could say.
Well, for me, I had a really long, really rocky spiritual journey. And I spent most of my life wishing I could believe more than I was actually able to believe. And that only shifted for me fairly recently, like a little over a year ago, actually not that long before you and I met, because I really hit the ground running. And the experience that shifted everything for me was that my guides came in.
Oh,
And up to that point, I had tried to do spiritual work and I never like felt a connection. I would, I would do the right steps and I would like go to the meditation workshops and I would go to energy healing sessions and I would just feel nothing. And I would experience nothing. And I kept doing it, like hoping something would happen. Um, and then I had decided to enroll in a class to actually learn an energy healing modality, which was particularly effective when I went to the sessions. I was like surprised how effective they felt. So I'm like, oh, maybe I could learn this. And it was really friendly for people who don't have like good intuition and aren't very clairvoyant. And, because I felt like I was, if we were going to evaluate spiritual competency and age, I was like a toddler. That's what I felt like. And so I was learning this modality, and as I'm learning this modality, which was very pendulum based, my guides started to use the pendulum to talk to me.
okay, nice. I like that.
Yeah, and from there, it's such a cliche phrase, but my entire life changed just almost overnight. It was that would be a whole other Instagram live
Another
topic, I
topic,
think.
yeah.
It was really intense. It was probably like the 6 most intense months of my life. But yeah, I went from having a business that I hated having for 10 years. I sold it. I'd kind of been working up to it, but this sort of catalyzed the whole process for me. I launched my spiritual practice, and just so many things shifted in my personal life, in my work, in my own healing. So my WTF moment was it was like a whole life thing.
Like, well, it's only a few months. Mine felt like it was over like the last 10 years, actually. Maybe not 10 years. I would say the first 5 to 6, and then the last, 4 to 5, I would say, because it's now been 11 years for me. But those were it's gotten easier, but I also got out of my own way. So I think that's what
Mm,
it was. So, well, awesome. Yeah, I could totally relate to that. And I just to kind of comment off of that, as you were saying, you weren't feeling anything, you didn't, sense anything in the beginning. That's how it was for me a lot of the time. Even to nowadays, a little bit, it's like that. But like when I'm doing readings for someone, like I'm just getting what I'm getting, and everybody tells me like, "Holy crap, that was like so insightful. That was so on point." And I'm like, okay, great. Like, but I think because I'm expecting it to be a certain way for me, that like I'm probably dismissing, just giving the message, which is what I've learned. I just give the message,
mm,
and so I feel I've kind of told my
mm,
friends that I'm the skeptical psychic because I always need something big to be proven to me. But I'm totally, as you can see, immersed into it and involved, and I really, I'm at home in this space. So it's a weird thing. It's a weird battle I go through.
Well, and
Um,
it's funny that you say that phrase because when I was in high school, I had an email address, the skeptical psychic at like yahoo.com.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
I
and
never thought about.
that
I
was
should have.
before I even got really into it, but I
That's
think
awesome.
I really would, classify myself kind of in that same group.
That's awesome. I love that. I never thought about having an email address like that, but now it's probably taken. So, uh, but that's kind of how I feel, and I've kind of stopped telling myself that the last couple of months, or I should say the last couple of years, because I'm starting to have more experiences where I'm like, okay, this is real. Like I need to be quiet. I need to listen to it and just trust it. And so I think once I've started to do that, things have kind of gotten just a little bit smoother.
Mm.
So yeah, but yeah, going on to some questions I was interested in manifesting because I love this topic. And one of the things you have in your description is you said that the nervous system kind of plays a role in manifesting, or at least how our emotions are attached to that and things. So can you explain like how the nervous system helps or hinders in manifesting?
Yeah, and I think the way I'd like to contextualize this is I'll sort of talk about how I discovered this for myself. So there's these kind of ingredients that come together and can lead to a lifetime of difficulty with manifesting. So for me, I'm naturally sensitive. And part of that is just that's my temperament. Some of that is, we inherit a lot of trauma from the previous generations. And like both of my parents came from very unstable situations in their home countries. So on multiple, in multiple directions, I was kind of inheriting sensitivity. And I also just came in as like a sensitive being. So, number one, I was sensitive. Number two, I had some experiences in childhood where because I was so sensitive, I reacted to them very strongly, even though some people, looking in from the outside might say, oh, that's just like normal childhood stuff. But for me, those experiences like imprinted on me very deeply in my emotional system, aka my nervous system, because any kind of experiences we go through where that we feel that survival impulse come up, that gets imprinted onto us very, very deeply, and it also frequently gets imprinted at a pre-verbal level. So that's why we're talking about the nervous system, because this is literally like what your body will allow you or not allow you to do based on how safe your body does or does not feel, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So for me, those factors came together. And what that led to over my development over the years, and there were some other factors here, such as like my parents' personality types and the ways that they sort of did and didn't deal with the trauma that they went through and how that affected their parenting. But basically, for me, I grew up feeling very emotionally powerless. And when we talk about manifestation, there's many types of manifestation, but the type that most of us are concerned with is the type of manifestation where we're taking an intention and we're bringing that intention into our lived material reality, right?
Yes. Yes.
And that's a process. That's a whole process. And the thing is that for someone like me, I felt fundamentally powerless. And I'm not talking like powerless in the sense of like the world is so big, I can't change the world. No, I felt powerless as like a person in just my own life. So I felt powerless when it came to manifesting anything I wanted in my life before I knew what manifesting was. I felt extremely powerless in terms of feeling like I had access to good things or that I could sustain good things. Because
Hmm.
there's a big difference between those two, right? There's a big
Yeah.
difference between like you accomplish the good thing and you can actually keep the good thing going. And so I developed a very strong pattern of like, okay, I can like kind of fix things, but it's going to immediately blow up and it's not going to last.
Right. I've been there. Yeah.
And yeah, and so that emotional substrate and that nervous system programming meant that when I got into my adulthood and I started getting interested in manifesting and I started, understanding the sort of more spiritual new age side of the universe and really resonating with it, um, I really, really struggled to follow manifestation advice because so much of it kind of assumes that you feel capable of anything at all. And I
Right.
really, yeah, I mean, there's a basic assumption in there. And the basic assumption is that you feel a certain level of capacity.
True.
And the thing was that even though I had compensated and I could go about daily life and I could actually get things done, emotionally and in my nervous system, I didn't really believe it. So no amount of outside evidence was going to change that for me internally because that was just like how I was, that was how I became programmed. And so what would happen is I would try to follow this manifestation advice, like you already have the thing. Feel how great it feels to have the thing. And I would get stuck at the first step. I'm like, I feel so terrible when I even try to imagine having the thing. Like I can't even get to that part of it.
Yeah, no, I've been there where I've gotten mad because I'm like, it's been 6 months, it's been, X amount of time, and I would get mad that it never came, not realizing there's a little bit more that, one, I'm not doing, and two, my mindset's not there. So yeah, that totally makes sense to me too.
Mhm.
So how would you kind of like shift your mindset um into, more of a manifesting, I guess, vibration or manifesting mindset, simply put.
Yeah, and I think this is part of the reason I want to do a workshop because it's got to be pretty individually tailored to whatever the person's emotional challenges are, right?
Mm,
Because I think that's the other problem with a lot of manifestation advice is it's very one size fits all. And what is going to help one person's nervous system feel safer would feel extremely dangerous for another person's nervous system, completely depending on the individual experience that these people have gone through. But to give some examples, just to get a sense of what we're talking about, for instance, what I discovered as I began to investigate this issue I was having, because I wondered, I'm like, why is nobody talking about my intense blockage around this?
right.
And
Yeah.
so it led me to start investigating this issue that I was having. Um, and of course, investigating what your actual subconscious beliefs are is very powerful. Learning how to regulate your nervous system is very powerful. But I think there's a third element here of understanding, especially like I was saying, those pre-verbal kind of patterns that we form,
Mhm.
understanding how to access that kind of core level of feeling powerless, overwhelmed, unable to, move out of survival mode, out of fight or flight or freeze or, whichever a person's response is. Um, because what happens with those pre-verbal experiences is they can be very, very difficult to access through talking or attempting to journal or, because they're almost just like pure emotion.
I can relate.
And what was that?
I said I can relate to that. There's sometimes where like I have stuff and I'm trying to write it out because they say journal it, and I've been told by everybody journal it and let it out, and I'm like writing and like I just don't know how to. I'm like, so I'm supposed to write this and I'm supposed to, and I'll literally write that. I need to let these emotions out. But like, it's just, it doesn't get there. It doesn't get there until it's like a random, I'm driving down this random road to the grocery store and all of a sudden I feel it coming out or something. Like it's,
Mm.
yeah, it's weird for me like that.
Well, and your body knows, right? Your body knows, like, okay, if we want this to come out, like, here's the environment where I can do that.
Right? Yeah, where he's not distracted, he's just focused on driving, and you're gonna get him now. So I that happens to me the weirdest times. So
Yeah. And so, what I have found for myself and, with the people I work with is that there is only so much you can do cognitively. There's only so much that you can access cognitively. There's only so much that you can actually shift cognitively. So it's important to find whatever types of methods work physically, bottom up, in addition to the top down. And for me personally, I've also found it to be a very powerful experience to use my attempts to manifest as a way into those emotions. So rather than
same
going,
here.
yeah, rather than going into the manifestation exercise with the end goal of making the manifestation happen or having a successful manifestation or even like doing it right, I go in with the goal of I'm going to attempt to do some manifestation around this, and then I'm going to work with whatever comes up at the moment. And
Okay.
so something I was working with recently was, one of our favorite ones. So many of us work on this is, right, financial abundance.
Mhm.
And I spent 3 weeks without once successfully feeling because that's the method I was trying. I was trying to step into feeling that I already had it.
Yeah.
And I spent 3 weeks unable to bridge that because every time I tried, the first time I tried, it was just anxiety, anxiety, anxiety. And it came up in all kinds of different forms of like, oh, but if I have more money, then like this person is going to ask me for money, or this person is going to expect something from me, or like it's suddenly going to be taken away from me, or things are going to go wrong because things always go wrong. Just all kinds of, it was all popping up.
That's hilarious. That sounds like people I know.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I worked with that part of me. I had other days where sadness came up, like a lot of sadness, a lot of grief, and a lot of that was around how finances have always felt like a point of insecurity for me. And so the idea of reaching a point of having a level of security that, consciously I think I want, it brought up all this sadness of just, oh God, if I could have had this all along, how terrible.
Right.
How terrible. Like how terrible that I went through all of that when it actually would have been possible for me to change it. And so there's some like there's a part of me that's like, no, I don't want to change that because then it will mean all my suffering was for nothing. And so that was
Right.
another, right? That was another part to work with. And I spent 3 weeks working with different parts of me, different responses, different emotional blockages before I could get to the point where I was, laying in bed and I finally did the goal. I was like, "Oh, I have my goal and it feels really nice."
3 weeks sounds like a good amount of time for me because I felt like that for me. There was a period where I was not working for 2 years, and
Mhm.
I was trying to do this, and it was like, again, I was like, well, trying to think of the mindset of having, a job that I enjoy. Is more so have like because I could get a job, but I was like, I don't want to get a a job where I'm like barely making it, and because I was the period where I was like super struggling, and during one of the recessions we've had over the last 20 years, but so I was like, okay, I quit my job. I wanted to go for what I wanted. And it took me 2 years to finally find something. And so all those 2 years, I was like, I was still, hustling. I had little jobs and side work and stuff. But it wasn't until for me, it was where my next question kind of comes into play is I had to completely give up. I remember talking to my guides, talking to whoever was upstairs listening. And I just said, I quit. I give up. I don't know what to do. Like, just bring me whatever it is I need to be. Like, I'm totally done. And I felt physically detached from all of the
expectations of, finding
Mhm.
something that I loved, all, finding just money. I was like, just give me anything at this point, because it's been 2 years, and I don't want to have to hustle, as much as I've been doing, and I want just something stable. And within a month of me totally giving up, I had, I may have actually told this story before, but I've had pretty much, I had a call from a hospital. I had a call from a corporate company, and then I had a second call from a corporate company. So I had 3 jobs, all the exact same title, and they had called me. Like, I was working with recruiters and everything and had nothing for a long time, and they all called me. And so for me, my way to manifest is just to completely detach, get rid of any emotion to the outcome. Like, that
Mhm.
actually worked for me when it came to that. But like, so that leads to my question, like, how does, from your experience, like, how does attachment, detachment, however you want to phrase that, how does that play in for you, and in all of this, like, using your emotions and things like that with manifesting?
Mhm. Before I answer that, I do want to clarify though that the 3 weeks was just to start manifesting.
Oh, just well,
It was just to
yeah,
start manifesting. And
just to
that's
get in
what
the
I
mindset.
mean is
Got
that
it.
this my approach, or my troubleshooting, or how I want to work with people and help people, is for the people who feel like they can't even they can't even get the car started, right? Like they
Mhm,
just can't
mhm.
even start manifesting. Um because that's been my struggle, and that's been what I have gone through. And it's it's very, how would I put this? It's very similar to the way that you work with a nervous system when you're working on a physical level. Because when you're working on a physical level, for example, there's, many different modalities, like, physical modalities. There's also devices like that you put on certain parts of your body, which can stimulate your vagus nerve. And there's all sorts of different ways to work with that nowadays. But the absolute advice that you are always going to come across is you start slow and you start low. So if you have a device, you start it on like the lowest setting, and you put it on for maybe like 30 seconds or 1 minute. You don't overload your nervous system. And so for somebody who is coming from a lifetime of where they've tried to do this, or they've tried to connect with positive emotions or positive outcomes, and have just hit the wall over and over again, you can't really jump over the wall,
Right.
because there's probably a cliff on the other side. You have to like go around that wall and find a nice little hill that you can like slowly walk up, and have a much gentler, much easier journey. And so those 3 weeks that I went through was just to get me to the point of even starting to do some manifestation work. And that's also not to say, because even after that 3 weeks, and then I had that, you know, night where I was like, "Oh, this actually feels nice and easy, and how lovely." Even after that, I still had times where I was, because I also try not to do too much manifestation work at once, so it might just be a couple minutes a day. And even after that 3 weeks, I still had things popping up where, "Oh, okay, here's a little more anxiety," or, "Oh, okay, here's a little more this or that." Um, so it's just a very slow, very gentle process of being with yourself wherever you are, and then finding whatever methods work. For some people it's journaling, for some people it's X or Y or Z, but finding whatever methods work for you to work with what material comes up, so that you can actually get into the process of being capable of doing the materialization work. Um, and I think, to tie into the attachment question, I actually think that, as non-beneficial as attachment is, when we're super attached to the outcome and we're getting like really, we have a lot of tight energy around it, and then we're not letting anything flow.
Yep.
Interestingly, I do think that exploring the attachment we feel when we're in this stage of working on our difficult emotions, I actually think it is helpful, because our attachments are kind of where a lot of these super dense emotions live.
Mm.
That's where a lot of our negativity kind of condenses.
Yeah, no, that As you're saying that, I'm like, yep, that's why I would get so upset because I was like, I've been looking and looking like for that job at least. And I just was like, I quit because and it was letting that go for me that ended up getting me to where I'm at now. And, I'm doing rather okay. And so I was able to get a house. I was able, I'm not, struggling like I used to. And I got to the point where I was like you were saying earlier, it's like, I didn't know what it was like to like have a job that I like or to have, decent amount of
Mm.
money. And so it was like, for me, my problem at the time, and even maybe now for some things, it's like, if I don't know what that feels like, and I don't know how it would be like to experience that, that's the hard part for me to try to, even doing the fake it till you make it part is super hard. So I just have to realize that I need to, for me again, I have to just totally detach from it. But like you're saying, there's emotions attached to it. So I have to figure out what those emotions are, and it's a whole process. So for me, it took 2 years, and then slowly I built my way up to, kind of where I'm at now. I'm not like, super, head of whatever, marketing team or anything like that. And I don't really want to be that, but I'm at a place where I'm comfortable and I'm able to, do a bunch of different things and do stuff like this, the events, and, kind of combine the passions that I have with the skills that, working in that field taught me. So
Yeah, and I think the other thing that happens is as we are able to have successes, they always build on themselves, right? And
yeah,
so the more often that you're able to work on manifesting something and to actually have something shift, and maybe you don't, maybe like let's say you're trying to manifest $100 and you get like 60. That is amazing, right? And for somebody who feels like they can't manifest $100, or for somebody who feels like they can only manifest more debt, $60 is amazing. And so it's always, seeing those little successes and really, really like savoring them as much as possible. And then using that as you kind of set bigger goals to say, like, okay, I know this is really hard for myself, but I can like look back on these couple of examples of success that I have, because the other thing is when you're working on these really like deeply entrenched patterns, you cannot just cognitively convince yourself like that's not true. That whole lifetime of experience you have, like that, all that lived experience that you went through and those extremely painful situations that, set you on the path you're on, none of that matters anymore.
yeah, just forget it. It didn't affect me. Yeah, no, that's again, that's my problem. I mean, I'm better at it now. I'm getting better at it, but like I will hold on to that. And that was kind of the way I was bred, I guess. My nervous system's wanting to just like not let that stuff go. But I'm working on that. Like I'm a lot better than I used to be. So I can totally resonate with that. So do you have any like techniques or tips for us to kind of help to regulate our emotions and to kind of switch out of these types of mindsets we're kind of discussing? Um, like not full things to give away, because we know you're going to go into depth with that a little more during the experience this weekend, but some little tidbits you might be able to give.
And, I wouldn't say there's anything to give away because my approach is always pretty individual. So I really try to be responsive to whatever people are coming in with. But I think a really good place to start is to have a realistic assessment of where you are and to start as small as you can. So that's another thing that a lot of us struggle with. And I think social media really doesn't help with this
Mhm.
because there are so many people on social media talking about, my $500,000 car or home or whatever. And I mean, maybe that actually did happen for them. And that's amazing, wonderful. However, a lot of us are not at that point, and that's fine. And, we are not that person. They are not us. We
Right.
don't need to be living their life. They don't need to be living ours. So, looking at yourself, being really realistic about where you are. Like number one, where you're at in your life, where you're at in your healing journey with whatever emotional stuff you're working with, where you are in your manifestation journey. Like, what have you been able to manifest? What haven't you been able to manifest? So, when you're working on shifting this, like, don't go for the stuff that you haven't been able to shift. Build on what you have been able to do to
Right.
start building your confidence. And again, go low, start slow. Like, start with small things, start with things that you actually can imagine. For example, if you can't imagine having a home, you can imagine having a room that's more comfortable, or you can imagine having maybe some kind of inspiration to like redecorate your space, or something that feels real and attainable to you, versus trying to go, so big when your body is not on board, when your emotional system is not on board, when even cognitively it might actually be a stretch for you to imagine.
Yeah.
That's not the thing to start with. Um, and I will say, if you work with your guides, like those bigger things, ask your guides for that. Ask your guides for help with that, and just like let them know, hey, I've got these really big goals. I've got these really big dreams. I'm really struggling. I don't know how to make this happen. I really, really want it, but I just don't know. I haven't had any success so far. So, like, please, help get me on the path, help set me up with the right connections, help transform me into the person who has these things, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you can, if you're not at the point where you can do these bigger things, ask for your team to help you. And you can focus on strengthening your materialization muscle. You can focus on what regulates you, like what feels good and right to you. And again, like, don't look to influencers. Like, some people may swear by yoga, but if every time you do yoga you get stressed out, like, it's not for you.
Right. That's funny. And then, so I'm laughing as you're saying that, because when you're talking about guides. And so like, I'm going to chime in here. So what if, which this is probably a whole other conversation, but like, what if the guides are like, I'm going to just stand back and let you like do the work yourself? Cause I've done that where I've asked my guides, and sometimes they work, sometimes it doesn't. I know when it used to come to work stuff, like I would literally start getting like, hey, work on this project. Hey, do this. And I played around with that actually. And what the
Mhm.
day times I listened, my boss would come around and ask for that like 10, 15, 20 minutes later. And I'm like, boom, here it is. And then the time, and I did some days where I didn't do that, same situation. I'm like, oh, you know what? I still have a couple more things to figure out on that, but I'll get that to you. Like, I'm going to work on that next, type of thing. And I would just like in a panic respond, but I played with that. And so they would listen. And so I still get that sometimes now. So I don't know if that's them or just my intuition, like, hey, work on this. But I'm pretty sure at least in the beginning it was them, because that wasn't a thought in my mind. And so they were trying
Mm.
to help me when I used to work with them a lot more too, I guess. But yeah, sometimes I feel like if my guides are probably similar to me, where they're just going to be like, well, I'll help you with this, but the other stuff you gotta work your way towards. So I don't know. that's,
My I have a
good.
question for you
Yeah.
though. Did they actually, this is entirely possible, but did they send you the message that like, no, you have to work on this, we're not going to help you with it? Or
No,
was that
that's
your,
my interpretation of it, because
okay.
a lot of the stuff that I've got, not to say they haven't like maybe done things in the background, but like I've really had to work my ass off for a lot of the stuff that I've gone through. And so like now I'm finally in this, like, in the last couple of years I've been in this like wave where it's like things are not as hard. They're not as much of they're not as stressful to like try to get through. It's not as challenging. Like when I start doing stuff now, like it just comes, it works out.
Mm.
And so that's why I say like I'm sure that was probably part of my life's lesson, to some extent, because when I started like even just doing these events like we were talking about, I had ideas and I was like, let me pull it back. And I was like, I don't even know if I'll continue doing it after the first one. And then here I am doing my second year, and all this other stuff. And it's like the universe now, actually, when it comes to anything event related, I'll start talking about what I want to do. And I'm like, I want maybe this type of venue. I want this type of, stuff going on. I'm not even kidding. Within a week, it pops up. And so that's
Mhm.
where I know, the universe, my guides, everyone on the team, they're like, okay, now you're doing what you're supposed to do. And we're going to help you get there quicker. Because 5 years ago, I would have been like, oh, I'd like to have, a job that pays this, be able to have my own place, because I didn't at the time, and da 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 da. And like, I was like trying to get there, and I was just hitting the wall. And all of a sudden now it's like I'm going towards things, and it's like maybe it's like a little bit of a bridge that you just have to, like you said, or the hill. You kind of have to climb up the hill, and then you can slide right down. So that's kind of this, again, whole other conversation we could have, but that's kind of been the way that like manifestation and things have worked for me. But I also want to point out that my thought process is not the same as it was 5 years ago. The way I go about
Mhm.
things and think about things because of all these struggles that I've had to go through is not the same. So I really had to shift my mindset. And I'm still in the process of shifting it because, I finally got to the point where like the things I was trying to manifest 5 years ago, 10 years ago are finally here. And I've
Mm.
got to the point now where it's like, well, I got to start manifesting a whole new set of things, which that's honestly kind of where these events came in because I'm like, okay, what do I want to do with the next part of my life? Um, and it was kind of got to the point where I was like, you know what, let me combine the things I enjoy doing, events and spiritual work, and boom, here we are. So yeah. And
Well, I want to offer you a possibility
sure, go ahead.
of like flipping your perspective a little bit on whether your guides were helping you more or less before and currently. Because my sense is that what might have happened is that when you were struggling and you were working your ass off, because, I was in the same place very much
Mm-hmm.
when I felt so spiritually disconnected, I would sometimes try to ask them for help, even though I wasn't sure if I believed in them.
Right.
And I
Right.
felt like nothing ever came. Or if it came, it was so much later that I'm like, but did that really, like, is it really connected?
Agree.
Um,
Same.
and I feel like for both of us, it's very, very possible that our guides were helping us more when we were struggling and working our asses off, and they're actually helping us less now. And I think that's because in our journeys, what happened is that we came into our abilities and our power, and we've cleared a lot out of our materialization channels. And so there's actually less for them to do.
You know what? I never thought about it that way, but that's a great perspective on that because yeah, I could see that because there's less, less of the onions they have to peel off. That's a
I
great way to
mean,
see it.
what they've been doing, and I mean, perhaps because I'm like strangely obsessed with journaling and chronicling my life. So I have a very like bird's eye view of my journey. Um, and that's perhaps why I am inclined to think this way. But the way I see it is that every step of the way, they were there working very quietly to the degree that I had the capability of receiving their help,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
because I was very blocked. I was really, really struggling to connect spiritually. And so to the degree that they were able to help me, but they were very much, I feel they were very much working on a macro level in my life to put all of the pieces in place to allow me to go on this, it's kind of like the hero's journey, right?
Mhm.
The hero goes on the journey where every challenge helps you grow into the person that is the best version of yourself. And so I can actually look back on, I mean, not 100%, but I can look back on the majority of the really tough experiences I've had in my life. And I can say, now I see how that fits.
Yeah. Same. Same. Because it's like and the thing is, if I didn't go through those things, I wouldn't be where I'm at, and I would be in somewhere else, I would be somewhere, but I wouldn't be where I'm at now. And so, a lot of times I do go of the mindset that I don't have much regrets because if I did something different, I wouldn't be who I am. Even one little thing, I may have a different mindset. So, I don't know if that would be better or worse, but here I am, and that's all I have. But no, I agree, and I do think about that too because I always say that jokingly because I know sometimes I'll say jokes about my guides, and I have some friends who are like rolling their eyes, and I'm thinking, well, they signed up for me, so they knew what they were getting. They know more about me than I know about me. And I have had someone tell me that my guide's very like kind of sarcastic and like serious and stuff, and he'll make sly comments, which I laugh and things like that, but. I was like, well, he knows what he signed up for, and I'm gonna have a good talking to him when I get back. So, but that's what I've always said. So we'll see how that goes. But no, I agree. They probably were trying to work with us to the extent that we were able to receive. I didn't think about it in that exact terms, but I like that.
I mean, I know for myself, I had problems receiving anything, not even just
Yeah.
from my guides. Like even now, like one of the things I'm working on, because I'm thinking about starting a podcast, and one of the things I'm working on is my really really conflicted feelings about receiving attention.
Actually, yeah, since we're on, right now, I know we actually kind of went over the time. I was trying to keep it to 30 minutes, but that's one thing. I was just having this conversation, I think, with almost every person that I've talked to in the last month
Mm.
about these lives is, having your face up there, because that was a huge fear of mine. And as I told you, one of the first times we did the live on this platform, there were some haters out there, and I was like, that's cool. Like, it doesn't bother me. That's a reflection of who you are and the issues you have, not me, or not, not our spiritual stuff. So I was actually kind of glad that happened, because that taught me, like, that kind of helped me to like realize, I am who I am. And, it helped me to get over my fear of putting my face out there more. I mean, still don't like to have my face out there, but, being that I'm going to be doing these events and kind of, I think the path that I'm going towards, I need to at least, get over that fear of putting myself out there like that, and help me to, overcome whatever it is I'm supposed to overcome. Cause I know as a kid, I was loud and in your face, and that totally
Mm.
shifted as I grew up. And, everybody would be like, why do you ask questions? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And I'm like, because you're not giving me the answers, one. And two, why don't I want to know? Like, why am I going to all of a sudden, submit to, like in school stuff for like, group work and stuff. I'm like, why am I going to let you guys do all this stuff that I'm not going to know what's going on, and stuff like that. And so I've learned to become very solitary in what I do and stuff. And, I'm very good at group work and stuff. I work in teams with work and stuff, but I just remember thinking that stuff. And, now I'm like putting my face out there, working with people more. And, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And I just can't waste the time caring,
I
so.
think that's a great attitude. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I mean, of course I'm afraid of haters. That doesn't sound pleasant, but I'm also afraid of receiving positive attention.
Yes. Can we talk about that for a
Yeah,
second?
no, I mean,
So,
like, even the
yeah.
other day, this totally came up for me where I, like, did my hairstyle different, and then I was at work, and something like 3 people complimented me, and then suddenly I just felt like I had lost the top layer of my skin or something. It was really
Yeah,
strange.
because you're
I
being
was like,
seen, and it's like you're being seen, and they're just like, "Oh, that's really nice," or because I've gotten complimented for these events and stuff, and I like, again, I did these events because I was like, I just want to do them for fun, not realizing that people were going to come up to me and like just tell, like, it was going to be life changing for them, because they found, some, like,
"Mm,
I've had almost every event someone was like, "Thank you so much. I'm so glad this is here. I finally was able to like find people, and I don't feel like I'm crazy, because everybody's like understands what I'm feeling and what I'm saying." And,
aw,
so I was just like, oh my God, I don't know. Like, I didn't know how to receive that. I mean, of course I said, thank you so much for that. Cause it's great feedback for me. And it's teaching me to learn to receive those things, because
mm,
I didn't get a lot of that, growing up and stuff. And I'm a doer as well. So I just do stuff, and it's like, I don't really like, sit back and wait for the accolades for it later. But I just thought that was a very unique thing. That was an experience, and it still is an experience to learn how to receive that,
mm."
in the kind of the world that we live in. So I totally,
Well,
totally resonate with that.
and I think that receiving it's a very intimate part of manifestation, right? Because
Yes. Yeah.
you're usually manifesting something that you want to receive. I mean, not always. We can, of course, try to manifest things for others or manifest things for the world. But a lot of times we're working on manifesting things that we ourselves want to receive. And if we don't have much of a capacity to receive, that's going to also be a roadblock that stands in our way.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good point. It's a good point. And that's taught me to, because normally you kind of brush off the, oh, like this, I do my hair like this all the time, or, oh, like they say, oh, this is an old shirt type of thing, whatever. But no, I've had to really learn to just be like, thank you so much. I'm glad, that it helped you. And not say more than that, and just like receive it. Cause it is like I was saying, it's an experience. For me, I'm like, it feels awkward. It feels weird, but I have to like tell myself like, no, it's okay to let that in. And so it's
mm,
things where I was like, just, feeling out and seeing what it is, like you were saying earlier, sit with those emotions, right? And feel what it is and why it feels weird to you, or why it feels awkward. And so I've learned some interesting things from that, but it's a great experience, just kind of receiving, in general. And I think that's probably, help to make things kind of, just like I was saying, it, at least with these events, things just kind of come smoother when I come up with something, or I'm like, oh, I want to have a singer, or I want to have this, or I want to have that. And literally it pops up. So I think that's great. So yeah, it's the way the universe is manifesting for me without, I guess, really realizing how I'm doing that or something. I don't know. It's very, just look into that a little more too.
Well, and out of curiosity, I mean, is that something that you were hoping would happen for people, that you would create this space and that people could come and have these sort of life-changing experiences?
So not in my mindset at all. I was
Mhm.
like, let me just do these events because I enjoy doing them, and I don't think I realized. And people were kind of telling me, like my friends that knew about it, they're like, yeah, so how do you feel about building this community and this and that? And I was kind of like, what do you mean, like community? What, huh? And all of a sudden, after my first event, it was like people connected. People, I don't know if you were at my first one, but people connected. Everything was very high vibe, very positive. It went well, and then people, it seemed like people had met and started connecting and working together afterwards, and like other groups formed from it and stuff. I'm using my hands a lot, and so and so it was very very shocking to me because my community, like in a way, wasn't necessarily like the main goal. My thing was I just wanted a space, which is somewhat describing community. I wanted a space for people to just come and learn how to do spiritual stuff. Because for me,
Mhm.
when I first got into it, I did find a venue or that taught classes and stuff. But I felt, I mean, I was lucky enough to find the people actually that I did feel, because the way I see the spiritual world is that it's very connected to the human world, the 3D 4D world, because a lot of the experiences I had were very woo woo with people. And I was like, that doesn't resonate with me. I'm very practical, very earthy, stereotypical Capricorn, grounded, all of that. And, I'm very like, what the fuck? Because that's, hence the name. I'm very much like, what the hell is this going on? And I'm very like direct with stuff. And so I needed something that kind of resonated a little bit more with me, and, to let people know that, you don't have to be flying high every day, to have
Mm,
spiritual experiences, right? Like you could still
yeah.
be walking around and like one of the things, I stubbed my toe the same toe, same foot, so many times. I'm like, that's a freaking lesson for me. And it happens every time I go on vacation. And so I learned that, okay, there's something this is telling me here. It's saying, even though I'm already on vacation, it's saying slow down even more. I never really looked into what it was the significance of breaking that specific toe twice, and then stubbing it like 3 other times, and it was an experience. But so those are the things that were for me. I'm like, there's a lesson here in that, and I
Yeah.
want to know what the heck that is. And a lot of times, when I've gone to, not all of them, but there's some people and or healers that I've experienced a long time ago. Haven't encountered that so much these days, but where it was more like the love and light,
Yeah.
and your angels are with you, you'll be fine. And I'm like, okay, great, but that doesn't give me any guidance. Like, what is that telling me? You're gonna get whatever you want, but it could be 50 years type of thing. And so, you know,
Well, and I also think it's funny to focus so much on like just the energy and just the like meditating. And I mean, that's all wonderful. But as you're talking about, like sometimes these lessons are very much in this world. Like
yes.
I also had an experience with my feet where I was working in my garage and I had one of those, those clear mats that have all those little sharp points on the bottom that you put down for like a computer chair.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
And I was trying to do something else, and then there was this whole series of weird random events that
Hmm.
led to me having to, like, lift this mat up and flip it over and clean under it because some water had gotten under there, whatever. And then in what I absolutely know was, like, totally engineered by my guides, they had me sort of, like, trip on something, and so I ended up standing on this mat in my 2 feet, which I only had on these very thin socks, and I was just like, "Ah!"
Oh yes.
And, I was talking to somebody about this later, and, I was working with my guides, like, all the time at that point because that was my, like, 6-month intensive with them, and I was wondering out loud, I'm like, "Was that some kind of, like, spiritual acupuncture on my feet or something?" And, lo and behold, like 7 months later or something, I start coming across all of these ads for those acupuncture mats that you lie down on,
Oh,
right?
that's interesting.
And
Okay.
and I would not have given them a second look except for the fact that I stepped on that thing and it just stuck with me, like it did not leave me. And so I looked into the mats and I was like, "These sound horrible. Why would anyone do these?"
Have you done
But
it?
I have done it. I now own one, and I have stood on
Ooh.
it.
Okay, I have seen those too. I mean, they popped up here and there on the ads, and I've thought about that, and I'm thinking, how am I, like, if I'm on there, it's gonna like probably go right through me. How am I even gonna get off without being in more pain? Like, so that's where my mind goes. But I mean,
Yeah,
I guess
they're kind
obviously
of
you can use them.
they're kind of terrible, but I have a chronic illness. Like I have a lot of physical issues, and it has been a really helpful tool for me. And it's also interestingly helped me with developing more body awareness.
Ah, okay.
So it's turned out to be this really useful tool that I never in a million years would have looked at if I hadn't accidentally stepped on that computer thing. Because I mean, and the idea of standing on it too, because most people just lay down on them.
Hmm.
But I do stand on it occasionally, and apparently I looked into this. I was like, is it actually safe to stand on these? Apparently, some people experience a lot of relief from like different, foot issues from standing on it. So,
Oh, okay. That's
and it's funny.
interesting.
It's funny how these lessons come in because, I mean, yeah, maybe they could have just sent me the ads for like a year straight or something, but I'm really good at ignoring ads. I'm not good at ignoring a bunch of little pinpricks poking into the bottom of my feet.
That's hilarious. That's actually, well, not to that extent, but that's actually how I got into learning about Dolores Cannon's work. Because apparently I
Oh.
was told I was supposed to be doing some of that, and I never. I took some of the first course, I think, and I never moved forward with that. But I had kept. I had seen it. I had seen it. I had seen it. Her name and the books and whatever. I totally ignored it for 6 months, and then finally something happened. I think it was I was in person with someone, and they started talking about these experiences. Granted, 6 months later, and all of a sudden I was like, that's so interesting. And I said, who is that? And they showed me everything. And then I went back and looked, and I was like, wait a minute, I've been seeing these and I just
Wait
ignored
a
them.
minute.
Yeah, and one of my friends was telling me, so because she could, she could hear guides and stuff, and so she was like, "Yeah, you're supposed to be working on that like 8 months ago, 9 months ago." And I said, "I've been ignoring it because it didn't. What am I going to do with it?" And now I'm like totally infatuated with her books. I don't do the practice. I don't, the hypnosis. I just don't have time to guide people through that. But I love listening to her books. I've listened to like half of the books she's had, and it's like
Oh,
totally
wow.
shifted my mindset. I'm in love with audiobooks, and so I'm listening to one of hers usually at some time, and then I'm listening to some other like for fun and things. So Napoleon Hill's other ones. I've just started listening to some of his stuff and things like that. So I kind of like to swap, here and there. So I'm not so like infatuated with one or the other. But Dolores Cannon would be like my grandma. Like her stuff's awesome.
Oh,
I love her. So, but yeah, we're actually kind of at time. We went over about 20 minutes, which is actually great. The conversation was fun. I was like, let's just keep going and worked out. But really quickly, because do you mind just kind of letting folks know how to find you
mhm.
and like how they can contact you and things like that?
Yeah. So my website is dawnlightblossoming.com. And then on pretty much every social media platform, it's just Dawnlight Blossoming. So technically, I'm on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I'm not like the best at updating, but I am going to try and work on that this year. So,
But they can still message you from those apps, and
oh,
you'll
yeah,
yeah, okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you. And everyone, just a reminder, this Sunday, her session is actually at 3:00, manifesting or how to manifest when hope feels scary. You can get tickets for $35 at spiritualwtf.com. And yeah, we'll hopefully see you all there. Admission is free to the event. We have food, we have other talks as well and other experiences and a ton of vendors where you can buy, tools, get healings, get readings, get massages, things like that. So it'll be a great time. And thankfully, it's not going to rain. It's supposed to rain in the evening after everything is done. So I just happened to see that earlier. And with my luck, it's going to push into Monday because, I've had really great luck with all of these events when it comes to the weather. So I'm not even going to worry about that. But all right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sheera, for having us or for being here today. And we will see you on Sunday.
Yeah. See you all on Sunday.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Intuitive WTF Podcast. I hope today's episode brought about a new perspective or at least made you question a current one. If you enjoyed this show, subscribe to this podcast now and don't forget to rate and review. If you have any questions or would like to add your perspective to today's topic, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, join us next time for another round of laughs. I look forward to bringing you many more WTF moments, but until then, this is Aaron Hart asking you to stay in curiosity, be in the moment, and always ask yourself, what the fuck?